People have spoken and they're tired of spending over $47,000, $50,000 for a new vehicle. Yes, in fact, they're making different decisions nowadays. With the average transaction price in that $47,000 to $48,000, with the fact that we've seen car prices on average trend upwards by 20% since the end of 2019 shows that they've far exceeded the inflationary rates. And yet these car manufacturers continue to build expensive, high-priced, high-margin vehicles, full-size SUVs, full-size pickup trucks. And while the Ford F-150, for example, followed by the Chevy Silverado, are some of the leading sold vehicles in North America, this trend is changing and people are making a very strong decision, and they've spoken very loudly. They're sick of paying these high prices for a lot of these new vehicles. I mean, case in point, I've got a few friends here who've made some recent car purchases. They needed them, their other vehicles wore out. One of my friends had a Ford F-150 and he was really shopping around looking at what Ford has the latest to offering. He really wanted the F-150, he liked his old F-150, and yet by the time he started looking and pondering and checking the numbers, it just didn't seem to make sense. It was simply too expensive for the latest generation of the Ford F-150. He wanted one badly, he loved the truck, but he had to start looking elsewhere. Lo and behold, he actually ended up going with a Toyota. He went with a Toyota Tacoma, lower spec level, just so he was able to afford to keep a truck that was closer to his budget. I know another gentleman who bought himself a fully loaded up Toyota Tundra. Beautiful truck. But it was the old generation. Now, he started looking around. It's time to start shopping around. He puts a lot of miles on his vehicle for work. And he decided, you know what? Maybe it's time for a new vehicle. Started looking at what Toyota had to offer because his new Tundra, his old Tundra, was starting to wear out and he was looking for a new one. Well, then lo and behold, Tundra, with their quality challenges, and of course, they're not different too. Toyota, we also see them cranking their vehicle prices up recently. Some of their full-size Tundras are absolutely out of this world for price tags. Even their Tacomas aren't necessarily cheap. However, there's new Tundras. Even with the quality challenges, we're finding that those brand new Tundras are an extreme amount of money for a pickup truck. So he elected to just decide, you know what, maybe I can wait. I'll hold off and I'll keep putting more miles on the old truck. I'm even getting a lot of viewers reaching out and saying, look, why don't you just fix what you've got? Clearly, let's wait out the storm. The storm of these high vehicle prices are just too damn high. People can't afford it. And even if they can afford it, even if they can truly afford some of these new vehicles, they don't want to buy it because it's almost an insult to injury. With the cost of these vehicles, the increases that we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years, people don't even want that. They're just done with the gouging that we're seeing in a lot of the automotive industry. Are there any deals out there? Yes, there's spotty deals. There are some deals out there to be had, but they're fewer and far between. Unfortunately, even brands like Ram, who were number 3 in terms of their full-size pickup trucks, are now sliding scale, losing a lot of market share to even smaller vehicles like the Honda CR-Vs, the Toyota RAV4s, and even Mazdas are selling more vehicles than a lot of Rams. Ram trucks are down. Of course, the other 2 big ones, the F-Series Fords and, of course, the GMC and the Silverados and the Chevys are selling more trucks, and yet Ram is falling behind. But a lot of people are making a conscious decision to buy smaller vehicles or just fix what you've got. I mean, I've got an 03 Ram 1500 and I'm loving it. I like it because I don't worry about it get door dinged. I don't worry about it, the cost of parts. Most of the parts are relatively low cost and I can do a lot of the repairs and maintenance myself because it's still a simple vehicle from a simple time. It doesn't have a lot of the electronics that a lot of the modern vehicles have, so I'm also not being monitored by Big Brother. And at $47,000, which is 20% increase from the end of 2019, the fact remains is a lot of people are having to spread out their loans to almost 6 years. With the average loan payment being around $737 a month, the interest rate associated with that new vehicle is close to 7.1% on average. That means it takes them 6 years to buy a vehicle that they're paying $800 a month for, and by the time it's paid off, it's literally worn out. And so there's 2 major trends going on right now. With the fact that we're seeing September numbers only 1% up since the year before, the clear level of growth just isn't there. People are deciding to do one of 2 things. Either 1, wait and not buy a vehicle yet. Wait for prices to come down. Incentives need to continue rising, because even with $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 off or 0%, but you're still paying the full sticker price, that's not enough to get people in the door. And a lot of people are waiting for a good deal, and they're just not satisfied with some of these high prices and the inflation and the high interest rates. It's just not enough to motivate people to get in the door. Or the second option is people are just, instead of buying a full-size Ram, a full-size pickup, a full-size SUV, and we've seen even the Wagoneer by Jeep isn't necessarily a hot seller. These larger, expensive, high trim level vehicles just aren't selling all that well because people don't have the money. So people now are making decisions to get away from some of those big, hunky, hulky SUVs, trucks that cost so much money, and going and making a decision to buy a much more cost-effective vehicle. Smaller vehicles, the RAV4s, the CRVs, small Kias and Hyundais, small Volkswagens, Tiguans are very popular these days. A lot of vehicles that are in the compact or subcompact categories are now on a rising increase in popularity. That's right, people are buying smaller, cheaper cars. Now, what a lot of buyers are finding is very laughable. According to Edmunds, an incentive rate of $1,812 seems to be the amount applied to the average transaction, the average vehicle today. People are laughing because when they're applying these $2,000 or $1,900 discount to a vehicle that's $85,000, it's quite laughable. People are thinking to themselves, well, wait a minute. 4 years ago, that vehicle was only $42,000, and a brand new version of that, which hasn't changed that much, is now at $79,000. How did we get here? So while all these manufacturers think that consumers are suckers, people are a little smarter. It's not that a lot of people can't afford it. It's because they don't want to buy these vehicles that are highly priced. Instead, they're making conscious decisions to buy more cost-effective vehicles that just make more sense, become more frugal. Why do I need this ginormous SUV? Why do I need this massive and extremely large full-size pickup truck? If all I'm doing is driving to work, maybe taking the kids to school, I don't need this massive vehicle. People are starting to make it make sense. And if I don't need the big vehicle, why am I going to spend that money? Maybe I'll just go with something cheaper and simpler. According to Cox Automotive, the small, compact or subcompact SUVs and cars have gained some significant steam here. Since 2018, we've never seen numbers like this. So as we all saw back in 2022 with the chip shortages and the fact that these car manufacturers were rationing chips, they were putting them in the more expensive vehicles, the big SUVs, the big pickup trucks, just so they can maximize their profits on every transaction. But a lot of customers weren't buying into that, and they continued fixing their old junk. But in 2022, they actually saw the decline in sales for subcompact and compact SUVs and cars at the all-time lowest it's been in years. Yes, it was down to 30% of the market share was in the compact or subcompact space. And now we're back up to about 35%, which is where we were back in 2018. A clear indication that we're trending upwards. And we've gained 5% of the market share back on the smaller vehicles because people just find it more easily affordable and just don't need those large vehicles and are quite frankly sick of paying these high prices. For some comparisons, Car Gurus shows that 16.7% increase in the popularity of subcompact or compact sedans. And when you compare that to some of the competition, you can see the gains that a lot of these small vehicles are making. Big pickup trucks in the last 12 months have only gained 6%, while full-size SUVs have only gained 1%. Clearly, people don't want gas guzzlers, expensive insurance, expensive gas, and expensive to buy. So the full-size pickup trucks were 1, 2, 3, Ford, Chevy, as well as Ram. But Stellantis has had some struggles. So now Stellantis has dropped the 6th spot, replaced by the Honda CR-V, the Toyota RAV4, and even the highly incentivized the Tesla Model Y because of its rebates due to the government incentives and, of course, the cashbacks related to the tax credit. Many analysts are saying $50,000 is that price point, and a lot of people spent it in the last 2, 3, 4 years. Leases are up. Of course, their finances are up or they're done. They're paying off that vehicle. Because remember, when this all started, it was back in 2020. Well, here we are 4 years later, going on 5 years later. That's pretty much the average loan term was between 5 and 6 years. So a lot of these vehicles are now coming for renewal, or people are flipping them or selling them. They're coming off lease. And now they're looking at their next vehicle. They've already spent that 50, 60 grand. But now they're looking for a cheaper alternative because they've spent that money during some of the busiest high-priced time in the automotive sector, and now they're making decisions, smart decisions, to start buying lower-cost vehicles that you can actually afford. Some other big impacts to the sheer cost, some other big impacts to this natural shift over to smaller vehicles is insurance rates have averaged up about 38% in recent years. So it's costing people a lot more money just to drive these vehicles. And if you're driving a full-size SUV, it's going to cost you a lot more money versus a smaller little subcompact car. Also, even typically higher income earners who normally would buy these $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 vehicles are taking second guesses because the volatility of the market, the indiscretion that they had now is a situation where they're not so sure if they can truly afford it. Stock prices are up and down, the governments are looking at changing up, and all kinds of instability and volatility in the marketplace and the economy just means people are just not totally comfortable and confident with where the industry's headed, and they want to make sure that they keep their money a little closer to the chest rather than spend it on some pointless $80,000 SUV. One example is the Chevy Trax, and Chevy reports that they're up to about 130% increase in the sales of their Trax subcompact SUV. We also know that Mitsubishi is having great success with some of their sub $20,000 price point vehicles. And the smaller vehicles like the Nissan Sentras and some of the Nissan products that are on the smaller end of the spectrum are selling much better too, simply because they're cheaper, they're more affordable. And some of these higher trim level, higher, more premium models are now going bye-bye unless people seem to be interested in spending the hard-earned dollars on these expensive vehicles that are at $48,000, $50,000, $60,000 and above. Now, while the Feds recently dumped some interest rates, there wasn't enough to really influence anybody too far. People are still looking at this and say, okay, it might save me an extra $38 on my monthly car payment. That's not enough to really get me in the door. And that's the problem. It's going to take a significant amount of interest rate adjustment and slashing to actually get people to rethink. Of course, other factors naturally are insurance rates, which are so high right now, and as well, fuel costs seem to be up and down. People just literally are done. They're broke. And even those that aren't broke, even those people, and there's a lot of them that have the money, they finally figured it out that these car makers are taking us all for a ride. And with all of that said, you've got to check out right there what's going on with the truck market. An absolute wild time to behold. Hope to see each and every one of you in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.